Hey everyone, today we're going to be making one of my Happy Cuisinier originals, and that is my bison meatball with a blackberry marinara. So let's do this. So this is a really easy recipe, and I only need a really small cutting board for this part, so it's perfect. The only thing I have to chop today is an onion. I have my funny blue knife. So I just cut off my ends, then set it straight on the cutting board and chop down lengthwise. And this is a medium onion. I'm just going to use half of it today. That's all we need. So slice lengthwise and then come down across, and that will give you a perfect small dice for this recipe. And this is about as much as I need. So I'm going to do my sauce first, and then I'm going to mix up my meatballs. So in go my onions. Then this pan's heating up. Once this starts sizzling, I know it's ready to go. So I guess I have some time while I'm waiting for my pan to heat up, so we can just start on our meatballs right now. So I have, this is 1 pound of a nice fine ground bison. And if you can't get bison in your area, or you'd rather use beef, that works as well. I will add that when I'm making regular meatballs, I like to use half pork and half ground beef, just because I feel like the pork gives it an extra bit of tenderness that you wouldn't get just with beef. So I'm going to add 1 egg. Sprinkle probably enough breadcrumbs, and this is Italian style breadcrumb. You can use regular as well. I don't know, this is just what they had today at the store. I act like I'm living out in the country. I'm not. I'm in the mountains though, and it's pretty busy, so people like to come and buy up everything. And then this is optional, but sometimes I'll give it a little splash of milk. And then a good amount of kosher salt to season my meats. And so I'm going to tend to my onions real fast, but then I will come back and mix up this mixture and make my meatballs with it. So when making sauce, I love to use wooden spoons. And this is like a nice flat spatula type wooden spoon. So I'm going to just let this cook down a little bit. I'm looking for not too much color, but I want them to turn iridescent. All right, so back to my meatballs. Just mixing it up here with my hands. And then what I'm looking for is, like I can see my mixture is pretty wet here, and I'm going to add in some more breadcrumbs because of that. So I probably use 3/4 of a cup at this point for 1 pound of meat. And I'm going to cook this in a cast iron pan today. If you don't have cast iron, no worries, but it will be easier for you if you use a nonstick. So this is a really good texture here. It's not shiny and wet, but it's still very nice and tender. I like to wash my hands a lot. I'm constantly washing my hands in the kitchen. So let's take a look at our onions. I'm going to let them go further because you can still see they're still pretty yellow. But at this point, I have my heat on medium high, and this is an electric stove. I'm going to turn this down to a level 5. But if you are on a gas stove, this will be a lot easier. You could still cook it probably at medium high heat and be okay. I'm going to also turn on my pan for my cast iron. Also, a reason I like to cook meatballs in the cast iron is because it's going to keep my pan seasoned. I feel like I cut my onions a little big this time. So if you just see any big chunks of onion, be sure to break them up. Okay, so I'm almost ready to add my blackberry in. The reason I like to use blackberries is because it really goes well with the flavor of the bison, and if there's any gaminess, it kind of tones that down a little bit. So just make sure your blackberries don't have any stems on them. And these look pretty good. All right, I'm gonna set my spatula to the side, and next I'm going to start mashing my blackberries. Sometimes it's easier to let them cook a little bit before you start doing this, just to let them soften up. They're not as ripe as they could be. So I'm gonna actually just let them cook a little bit. And then after that, I'm going to add sugar in, as well as some Italian seasoning for flavor. It's really important to have sugar because without this, the sauce will be very tart. I'm also using crushed tomatoes today, and this is just a 14.5 ounce can. You can double this recipe, and this recipe serves about 6 to 8 people, so you can always double it if you have more people, or if you want more meatballs left over. Okay, so I'm going to add, for my hand, I'm going to add a medium handful of sugar. And I know that I've always had to add more sugar in the past, so I'm going to double that up. Alright, I'm going to start mashing my blackberries. I'm going to turn down my heat a little bit too. And the reason I'm doing my sauce first is because as soon as I sear off my meatballs, I'm going to throw them right into the sauce so they can start cooking. And also, the meatballs are going to add a depth of flavor to the sauce as well. You can leave your blackberries as fine or as chunky as you would like. But you can see now I have almost a jammy consistency. I'm going to leave this as is now. Now this is an Italian blend seasoning that you can get at the store. I think no matter what brand you get, they're going to be about the same. So just sprinkle, I use a decent amount of Italian seasoning. And we're just going to cook this until you can smell the aromatics of the Italian seasoning. Okay, I'm going to add in my crushed tomato, and I'm going to turn this back up heat-wise. And then to this, I'm also going to add half a can of the water and give it a nice stir so it comes together. So this one, I'll also add a pinch of salt to this sauce. This sauce does not need too much salt. Okay, so I'm going to let this cook. I really would like it to come up to a boil, and then I can bring it down to a simmer. So once I start hearing it boil, I'll drop my heat again. My pan's smoking over here. So I turned on the heat, but I'm also going to take it off of the heat for now until I'm ready with my meatballs. Perfect. So an easy way to do this is just form your meatballs right in the bowl. That way you can keep an eye on your sauce while it's cooking, and then you'll have your meatballs ready to sear. So I make them not too big or too small, just right in the middle. And I'll just pinch off a piece, get them as round as I can, and just set them back in the bowl. You can also take this time to give your sauce a little taste. This flavor will change, but this will help you know if your sauce is sweet enough. That's what I'm looking out for when I do this part. That has a good sweetness to it, so I'm not going to mess with it anymore. So now I'm going to put my pan back on the heat. And let's just test and see how hot this oil still is. So no, I need to get this back up. I'll just leave this meatball in, and once it starts really going, I know I can add the rest of them in. All right, so I'm gonna flip this and add in a couple more meatballs. And don't walk away from these because these will sear up really quickly. This is probably as dark as I want it to get. I don't want to burn my meatballs. All right, so all my meatballs fit perfectly in here. I'm going to cover them up and let them simmer for at least 10 minutes. That way they can cook all the way through. So we're halfway here, and I'm going to take off my lid so that I can allow my sauce to reduce. You can also put these in a casserole dish and finish them off in the oven at about 375. All right, it's looking really good, so I'm going to just take one meatball and test it for doneness. You can see that my sauce isn't very watery too. It's sticking to the meatballs. I'm just gonna cut right into it. It's still a little raw in the middle. So I'm gonna give it 5 more minutes, and we are going to be ready to eat. Okay, well at this point my sauce is so perfect that what I'm going to do is just take it off the heat, and I'm going to cover it and let it rest for about 3 minutes. A great accompaniment to this meatball is some nice French bread from the store. Make sure you heat it up first so you can get a nice crust on it. I usually do it at 425 degrees for about 6 minutes. All right, well, I'm gonna start serving up some meatballs. And this makes a great lunch or a great party appetizer. Thanks for watching, and if you end up trying my recipe, let me know how it goes. I don't have any white plates. I don't have a white plate. Oh well.